Welcome, everybody, one and all, to the first installment of the Professionalism 101 workshop. My name is Carly Spencer, and among many things, I am an attorney, cheese enthusiast, entrepreneur, Miss Raleigh, and today, your moderator on the Professionalism 101 workshop. This workshop has become a reality in order to fill a very real need that young people are facing towards the end of their educational journey. And it's that they don't actually know how to find success in the real world because we just seem to not be teaching this in schools. So, success in the real world, as we know, it takes so much more than just a degree, whether that's a high school degree or a college degree. And there's a lot of soft skills and professional expectations, how to give a 2 weeks notice, how to write a proper cover letter and resume so that you can even get the job to begin with, that most young adults are just never really taught throughout their educational journey. So, the Professionalism 101 workshop is designed to help fill some of those gaps so that everyone can transition successfully from school to the real world. So today, some of the things that we are going to cover are resumes and cover letters, interviewing, professional attire, professional networking, and we will have a Q&A session at the end. So joining me today, if I can figure out how to work this slideshow, joining me today from across the country, we have three wonderful women who have crazy backgrounds, crazy experience that they're going to share with you that just gives them the authority to speak on this issue. We have Sunny Day from Oklahoma. We have Miranda Moore from Georgia and Tasha St. Jane from New York. So we're going to get started. And before we do, this is one of my favorite quotes about success. And I think that it's so applicable to almost every situation in the real world, that success is where preparation meets opportunity. So today during this workshop is where you are going to be getting some of that preparation through free resources and free tips and tricks on how to be successful in the real world. Then all you have to do is go out there and find the opportunity. So first up is Sunny, and I will let you take it away.
Hi, my name is Sunny Day and I'm Miss Oil Capital. I'm running for Miss Oklahoma in June. I will be competing June 5th through June 12th. And my social impact initiative goes hand in hand with, I think, every person's who's on this call, and it is Ready, Set, Go, protecting underprivileged youth. And it's a three-pillared approach, motivating and teaching kids life skills and also getting them mentorship in the public education system. Because much like Carly said, we do not, and I speak as a public school educator, we do not prepare kids for anything beyond going to college or whatever it is that they're wanting to do. We do not have a curriculum set in place that gives them those essential skills that are going to help them thrive in whatever way they choose to do so. So today I'm going to be talking about resumes and cover letters. So first things first, we need to talk about what a resume is. A resume is an incredible marketing tool that's going to help showcase your experience and your applicable skills. And I say applicable because you want to make sure that you're putting skills on your resume for that specific job opportunity that you're applying for. And then a cover letter, ultimately just a detailed essay or a short letter that explains to that hiring manager why you are qualified for the job. One thing that's very important to know, and I know this from experience, is that most employers, they don't read your full resume and they don't read your full cover letter. They skim through it. So it's important to be concise and to also, like I said, make sure they're tailored to that specific opportunity that you are going for. Okay, so what to put on your resume? Of course, your education, your experience, and there are some optional segments that I'm going to talk about as well. Okay, in regards to what to put on regarding your education on your resume, you want to make sure that you write out the universities, include the city and state where you went to school. And if you haven't graduated yet, let them know that you are anticipated or you're expected or en route to graduate. That way that they know that you're on that path to success, whatever that is for you. And it is suggested to not include community college unless you have received a degree. Include your Bachelor of Arts or your Bachelor of Science. Be very specific about the majors or specializations that you went through in school, and definitely include your minors. A lot of times we're told that our minors are pointless and they don't mean anything, but you still spent an adequate amount of time obtaining that minor so you could have those skills for whatever job you're going for. You can include your academic or merit scholarships. So important because that shows that you had to work diligently in order to obtain those scholarships in the first place. Any notable awards or honors, study abroad programs are always great because then they know that you have experience in other cultures and countries, languages. Your GPA is something that is optional. I always suggest to not include it if it's under a 3.0 because for some reason, people take that number very seriously, but they don't take into account the things that may have occurred in your life or your time in college that may have made that GPA go down. Don't include any relevant coursework. So don't put what courses you took because that's just taking up space that you could use to put your skills on. And then don't include your high school. It's not relevant anymore because you are now out of that and you're in the professional world. With the experience part on your resume, you want to include what title you're going for, what titles you've had, the name of the employer. So if they want to call for recommendations, they can do that, the city and location, and your dates. Sometimes people get so nervous because they may have only worked at one place and they have one job to put on their resume. But if you've worked at that one place for 4 years, that shows consistency and it shows dedication, and employers want that in someone. They don't want someone who has 8 different jobs and only worked there for 6 months. That's not exactly a good look. You want to reverse things in chronological order and use bullet points to help them. Like I said at the beginning, they do pretty much just scan that resume, so they want to make sure that it's easy to read. 2 to 5 items with the most relevant. Don't go over that. Don't go anything past probably 5 or 6 years because they want to know what is most recent that you've done. Include any relevant paid employment, internships, or volunteer work because that is also time that you've dedicated to your profession. Use action verbs. So try to use them as you're doing them present tense or past. You have done them past tense. So as an English teacher, I had to include that because sometimes when I look at resumes and I see tenses and they're not the same, it makes me a little crazy. Focus on your accomplishments and quantify them when they are possible. And like I said, be concise and think about those transferable skills that you can use in any workplace. And the optional segments, which is my favorite because a lot of people don't know what to put on their skills. So we have our hard skills and we have our soft skills. Don't use the same skills for every job that you are applying for. Really research that job opportunity that you're going for and think about what skills you would specifically offer that organization or that job, and make sure to, like I said, on your cover letter and resume, to change it. I've made the mistake when I was in high school. I submitted the same resume and the same cover letter to every area. And whenever we get to cover letters later, you'll learn that you are supposed to put in the person, the hiring manager's name in that cover letter. And I never changed that in high school. And they were like, well, I'm not Carly, and I'm like, oh, oops. So make sure that you are really, really good about double checking that. Any professional affiliations or professional development, that's something as an educator that I always put on there. We are always doing professional development, and that looks really good because it shows that you're dedicated to, even if you're in a job, that you're willing to continuously enhance yourself in that organization. And then, of course, any leadership or volunteer work and your interests, your honors and awards. And I put some examples there of what those areas might look like. So if you want to just take a minute to screenshot that, you can. Those are some really good examples of experience, skills, and honors and awards on your resume. And the cover letter. So I always say that there are 4 most important things to put on your cover letter. The first is your contact information. They need to have a way to contact you if they're interested in you. So your name, your email. I don't suggest putting your address. An introduction to the hiring manager. Approach them in a personable way. Let them know that you know who they are and you know the name of the organization. So start your cover letters off. If you look in those two examples, there's an introduction of the hiring manager's name, the company's name, the address, and their email. That shows that you've put in the work to get to know them and to research them and their organization, and that shows dedication. And then the body of the cover letter, this is pretty much an essay or a short description of why you are the best candidate. I say it's almost like your resume in an essay form. It's taking all of those bullet points and putting it in a quick pitch, which all of us girls know what a pitch is. We have to kind of sell ourselves in a really short manner. That's ultimately what a cover letter is just wrapping up that resume into a beautiful essay. And then finally, your closing statement, and you have to sign it. The do's and don'ts, my favorite. So use bolding, capitalization, italics, and underline so you're separating your sections. Like the experience, the education, your skills, make those big and bold so they know what's coming after and they know what they're looking at on that paperwork. Stay consistent. Make sure everything kind of flows together and you look like one concise and consistent person. And then have a balance of text and white space. Do not overwhelm them with a bunch of different text because it's going to be very challenging for them to want to get into it and look at it. Your design is so important. I'm a huge lover of Canva, but depending on the job that I'm going for, probably a purple resume, flowers at the top corner, it's not going to be relevant. If I'm to run for public office, probably not the best option. So be very, very important about your designs and your color choice and make sure that it really goes for what you are trying to go for. And then it's a good representation of who you are. And use the same contact letter for your resume and your cover letter. You want those two pieces of papers to look like they belong together. And I always say save and submit as a PDF. That way it prints off really nice if you're handing it in person, or if you're submitting it over email, it's very easy for them to download and look at because sometimes Word, or if you're doing it on Google Docs or Canva, it can kind of do things to its own format. And then the don'ts. Do not highlight anything on your resume that is not true or that you're not willing to speak about. Us girls know that better than anything. If you don't want to be asked about it or you don't have an answer or an explanation about it, don't put it on there because they will find out really quick if you are trying to fool them or trying to talk yourself up to be something that you're not. So be honest and be willing to speak about everything that is on that resume. This is my favorite. Do not let any typos slip through the cracks. It happens all the time. I've done it. I see my students do it. So make sure that you double check if you need to. I'm an English teacher. Send your resume and your cover letter to me. I will gladly look over it and revise it for you, but please double check your wording, how everything looks, your punctuation, everything. Don't submit a resume with typos. And do not include a long summary of those qualifications. Like I said, use bullet points because you want to be able to go in depth about everything that's on your resume as talking points in the interview. You don't want to put everything on that resume because you want to be able to really go in depth on those and to sell yourself in that interview verbally. Do not go over one page unless they have told you that that is acceptable because it is just a lot to look at. And if they are a hiring organization, you're probably not the only resume that they're looking at and they don't want to be overwhelmed and just toss it to the side. And then, like I said, don't forget to read over it before you submit it.
All right. Thank you so much. I actually learned a few new tips and tricks while you were presenting. That's what's so fun about doing this and continuing to learn. As a teacher, I know that there are always opportunities to continue learning, and COVID has made that abundantly clear. So thank you so much for sharing, and we will move on to our next speaker.
Hello, everyone. My name is Miranda Moore. I am the current Miss Flint River, and I will be competing for the job of Miss Georgia this summer. Like Sunny weighed in on, I think all of our social impact initiatives are really in the same vein, but mine is titled Beyond the Classroom, and it is about college career readiness for high school students. So it's inspired by my transition, what I faced, a lot of the struggles, a lot of the failures that I had in my jump from high school to college, and what I wish I had been told, and what resources I wish I had, and opportunities I wish I had. And so I'm doing everything I can to provide those to students through my platform. And so today I'm going to be talking about interviewing and professional attire, which is something that I have come to learn a lot about over the past few years, because I did not know what I wish I knew. If I could go back and watch my high school self interview for things, I'm sure I would be absolutely mortified. So we're going to make sure that doesn't happen to anybody else. That's why we're here. That's why we're helping you all out. So the ultimate guide to interviewing includes before, during, and after the interview. So before the interview, here are a few steps that I would recommend. So you're going to first accept your invitation to interview. I think this is something a lot of people don't know that you should do. So when someone reaches out to you and offers you an interview, be sure not only to accept it, but to thank them. That's the first step in showing that you're appreciative and that you're looking forward to it. And so that's a really good way. A lot of people don't do that. And so you can really put your name at the top of their list just by doing that one little thing and sending them a thank you. I'm looking forward to this and I accept your invitation to interview. Next, you're going to want to make sure you obtain the interviewer's name and title and confirm the date, time, and location or platform, if it's virtual, of your interview. Sunny did an amazing job talking about this. Your cover letter and your resume should be tailored to this position. And part of that is knowing who you're going to be talking to and what you're going to be talking to them about. So be sure you research your position and the organization really thoroughly too. Something I love doing when I interview is know the company, organization, opportunities, mission statement inside and out. We talk about, you need to know the Miss America mission statement if you're going to be competing for a title. You just need to know what you want to be a part of represents, and then you can cater what you say and what you represent and what experience you have, opportunities you've had, that kind of thing to that. And that is so important. And that's what takes you from being a good candidate to a great candidate for an opportunity. So definitely do that research. Don't go into the interview and be like, I'm just going to go in and it's you should prep. You should be. That's why we're here. That's why we're talking through this. You need to be prepared to succeed. Love that quote that Carly shared earlier as well. Identify your skills and experience that relates, all of that kind of the same vein. Review common questions and practice answering them. I have a couple sample questions that'll be coming up later, so that's a great chance to look over that. And when you're answering those, answer them out loud. I know it's weird, but I used to always read through interview questions and think of the answers in my head. And then when it came to the interview, they'd ask me that question and the words don't come out of my mouth in the way that I had them in my head. So be sure, I know it's awkward. You can practice with friends, family. You can literally sit and practice with yourself, practice in the car. I do mock interviews in my car. Nobody has to know. Everybody does, but it's a good time to do it. You just get into your headspace and you want to hear those words come out of your mouth and you want to hear how you say them and practice your inflection. Definitely practice. Practicing questions is such a key point before your interview. Understand the 4 types of questions. We're going to go over those, and then prepare 3 to 5 questions to ask the interviewer. We're going to cover that too, but that is probably one of my biggest pet peeves when I interview people now on the other side of the table. If they have absolutely no questions, I promise you, you have questions. You just maybe didn't think about them quite yet. So be sure before you get into that room that you've thought about the questions that you're going to ask, and make sure you get your answers. Interviews are conversations. They're interviewing you, but you're also interviewing them to know if that's a good fit for you and if this opportunity is right for you. So be sure that you're kind of ready to engage in a conversation versus just get asked things. Be ready to ask and plan what to wear. We're going to cover that too. During the interview, time your arrival to 10 to 15 minutes before the interview start time and have printed copies of your resume. So that, for me, it says relax, be yourself, be positive. Getting there early not only shows that you're prepared, but it also gives you time to get there and kind of chill out. If you're running late, you're going to be on your anxious, you're going to get there, you're already going to be nervous, you're already going to be stressed, and being a little bit late or right on time is going to stress you out even more. So planning to be early helps get you in the right headspace. Plus, sometimes you get to see the environment that you're going to work in if it's in person, which is always really nice. You typically interview at the office or at the organization. Gives you a chance to scope things out. Are people smiling? Do people look like they enjoy their job? That's another great time for you to see what the company culture is like, is get there a little bit early. You kind of get to be a part of it, be in it a little bit. Be aware of your posture, eye contact, and body language. MAO ladies, you know this so well. I would say posture is such a huge part of everything. The difference between sitting slouched and up, you're going to just look more prepared. You're going to look more alert. You're going to look more engaging. It's just those tiny changes that are also going to make you feel more confident. It exudes like power and confidence. And if you've ever heard of doing a power stance, before your interview, that's the same thing in your interview. You kind of like get into that position, you feel it, you're going to perform better just with that slight difference. And body language, so much of what people hear is how you say it and what you're doing when you say it, not necessarily the words that you're saying. So that is so important that you have all of those things engaged and you're on your A game during your interview. Listen closely to questions and be concise in your answers. I give this tip and I need to take it. I have a big problem with conciseness, and it's something that requires so much practice. I feel like, especially if you're somebody who's more of like a talker, who's more social, you want to share your life story with everybody you meet. I feel so bad for people at the grocery store in line behind me because they always know everything about me. I love talking to people. I could talk all day. And so be sure that you're as concise as possible, because that also gives you more chance to get to know you. If you have a 10 interview and you can get 20 questions in instead of 10, they're getting to learn twice as much about you. So that's always important too. Conciseness gives you more chance to show who you are and be who you are. Clarify the hiring timeline. That's a great question at the end if they didn't already clarify that with you. What's this timeline going to look like? When can I expect to hear from you? Will there be further interviews? All of those questions can help you show interest and also give you peace of mind, because I'm sure you'd like to know when you're going to know what's going on too. And then collect business cards, or at least the name and title, from everyone that you meet. This is also a great opportunity. I'm going to cover this in after the interview, but it is always great to follow up and show your appreciation and say thank you. And having those names and titles is a great chance to do that, because you can address them as who they are. After the interview, here it is. Write a thank you email to the interviewers and be sure to review the email for spelling and grammatical errors. Reach out to Sunny. She says she's got this for you. She's our resident English teacher. We've got her on our side. That you are sending not only a thank you, but a very professional and well-written thank you. And I would say it's always great to, in your follow-up, express your interest in the position and make it known why you are the ideal candidate. This isn't a time to like restate your cover letter. It shouldn't be a super long email, but saying something that kind of ties all your loose ends up. I typically put something like a personal statement in my follow-up emails that says, thank you so much. I'm whoever. I believe that XYZ traits will make me great for this position, and I'm so fortunate to have had the opportunity to interview with you. It is not long. Please don't write a 10-page email. They really know you. They've probably already really considered you and thought about your traits. It just gives you a chance to tie that pretty little bow, send your last thank you, and hopefully leave your best foot forward with them. And then only continue to follow up if they haven't contacted you within the determined timeline. I know this happens sometimes. It can actually be really detrimental for jobs if you're somebody who follows up too often. It just isn't something that people really seem to be attracted to or find appealing if you're, every day saying, haven't heard back yet. I'd love to know if I got this job, because they have so much going on. And so when they give you a timeline, if they say you'll know by Friday, definitely don't follow up with them until, the following Monday, whatever that case may be. Definitely don't follow up before the timeline that they offered you, because that's the reason they set up that timeline for you, is so that you know when you can expect to hear back. And then continue to apply to other roles and network until you have accepted an offer. I also think this is really important, but as soon as you accept that offer, be sure to contact anybody else you were hiring with or interviewing with and let them know that you are no longer moving forward in their process, because that can be frustrating for people hiring too. If they continue to interview you and find out you've accepted another position or you're moving forward with another company, that's time that they could have used to find another. So be sure that you're being candid with companies, but still continue networking until you have a position that you're happy with and that you've accepted. All right, I'll go through these kind of quick, but these are the 4 interview question types: traditional, behavioral, case, and situational. And then we're also going to cover questions to ask the interviewer or employer. So not going to read through these. This is just for you to come back and reference. You can always screenshot it. Great time to practice in your car, in your mirror, when you're hanging out with friends. If you have a big interview coming up, that is when your friends are going to be so happy to interview you and support you. Be sure you ask them. I love interviewing my friends. It might just be me. I'll interview any of you guys. You reach out to me on Instagram anytime you want to do mocks, you want to do anything. I think it is so fun. It's beneficial for both people involved. So be sure that you're practicing. So traditional questions would be things just about you, about your life. Surface level, tell me about yourself. Always be ready for those. Behavioral questions, so these are really similar to situational. There's very slight differences, but a behavioral question would be more about a trait that you have or a personality trait that you think that you have and how that has impacted your ability to work with others, your ability to perform well in certain situations, where your strengths may lie and where your weaknesses may lie, and have weaknesses available too. Your weakness should not be I work too hard, ever. Never say yours should be a true weakness. Everybody has them. And it's good to know what those are and be able to address them. So those are all in the behavioral vein. Case questions and situational questions. Case questions are where my weakness lies. Anybody watching this, I am not the best at case questions. This is the kind of thing, how many pennies would it take to reach the top of the Empire State Building? There's a string in the air, you pull on it. What's on the other side? That kind of thing. Always be ready for those. I know employers sometimes love to throw one of those at you just to see how your brain works and to kind of see your personality. And then situational questions are, if it's happened, what would you do? Where is a time where you should skill? That kind of thing. And situational questions are an amazing time to show a huge amount of your strengths and your personality all in one question. So I love situational questions, and so do employers, I would say. So they're great to be ready for. And then sample interview questions to ask employers once that interview is done. They say, do you have any questions for us? Always have questions and have them prepared beforehand, because you want to be comfortable. Of course, if they come up with, during the interview, you think of something, I should ask them this. Definitely don't be like, wasn't one of my planned questions, so I can't ask. You can come up with questions during the interview, and you definitely might when they're talking with you about company culture and what to expect. You may come up with new questions, but definitely go in with a few so that you have some on deck that you actually want to know about too. Don't just come up with questions to have questions. Think of what you'd actually like to know when you leave that room. And then acing the interview, the STAR technique, every question that you can. This is a really simple thing. Situation, describe a situation where you did something. Task, describe the goal that you were working towards or the problem that you were solving. Action, what did you do to do that? And then result, how did the outcome come out? What problem did you solve? What goal did you achieve? And that is a great time for you to take credit. So when you are in this interview, this is your interview, this is your time to shine. It's a great time to say, I did this. Exactly what Sunny said, quantify it. I got 8,000 people to come to this event. I raised $10,000. That is a great time to show those really hard skills and ace that interview. Video and phone, you can screenshot this too, just covering some small things with the new virtual world. So definitely recommend checking this out if you have a video or phone interview coming up. Professional dress, business professional and business casual. This is the one thing we talked about before the interview. Make sure you're ready to go. You've got your outfit laid out, and we're going to just go through quickly the difference between business professional and business casual. So for business professional, this is what I would say you should assume that the interview is going to be. For most cases, you're going to be dressing business professional. And if in doubt, I always say you should dress a little bit, up. You never want to be the underdressed person. I would always prefer to be overdressed, but don't be too overdressed. If they say it's casual, don't show up in a suit either. You just use your own judgment, and you can always ask if you're ever doubting whether it's professional or casual. You can reach out to the hiring manager, reach out to who's interviewing you. That shows interest, and that shows that you're thinking about things ahead of time. So never feel bad to ask. That's a great thing to do and a great way to show interest. So like I said, I'm definitely be screenshotting these. Hopefully when y'all are watching this, if this is helpful to you, definitely keep this information with you. But the most important thing with business professional is that kind of the difference is typically it's a suit with matching pieces rather than with business casual. It's a bit less. You don't really need to be as matchy-matchy. You don't really need to be as dressed up. And typically business professional, I'd err more on the side of neutrals, especially in a office setting. Of course, every setting is different. Every industry is different, but a really safe way to go is neutrals in business professional, have things matching. And then of course, just those small details. In business casual, a little bit more chance, I would say, to have a bit more personality in your outfit. I'd say brighter colors are a little bit more appropriate in business casual. This is when you can wear maybe a polo. You don't necessarily need to have your pieces matching. You don't necessarily need to wear a tie. So there's just some things that are a little bit more simple in business casual, but always be sure to I use Pinterest. I linked my university's career center Pinterest there because they have such good listed items to know the difference between professional and casual. So you can look it up. I always check before interviews. Literally, I've dressed business professional and casual hundreds of times in my life. Every single time I still go on Pinterest and still double check. I'm like, am I sure? So it never hurts to double check out your outfit, show it to friends while they're mock interviewing you, wear it. And I love to make sure I try on my outfit that I have laid out before the day of the interview, because there's nothing worse than being already kind of nervous and going into an interview and you put on your outfit and you're like, this isn't how I expected it to look. So doing a test run with your outfit never hurts either.
Thank you so much. I am obsessed with the difference between business casual and business professional because, for whatever reason, this is probably the most common question I feel like young adults have when they're going not even just to interviews, but to college scholarship interviews, to orientation, anything of that nature. They really don't know the difference between business casual and business professional. So I'm going to second that everyone needs to be screenshotting this. And when you have that question, this is so much more helpful. I don't know if you've ever Googled it, but Google is actually not very helpful to explain the difference. This is gold, and this is laid out in such an easy and understandable way. So thank you for that. And all of the interview tips and tricks, so in depth, so helpful. And I feel like every single slide that all of you have made so far is totally screenshot, save it, and pull it out for a rainy day. So thank you so much. We are going to move on to our next speaker. And
Hi, my name is Taisha St. Jean. I am Miss Syracuse. I will be competing in May for the Miss New York title. And I have a personal program that's nationwide called Creating Endless Opportunities, which is also my social impact initiative. We focus on college readiness and scholarships. So it seems like all of us are in the same ideas. And I'm so glad that we're able to talk about this because it's so beneficial for students to hear this. As a college professor also, I know that these students need these tips. So I'm lucky enough to talk about networking. So let's just jump right into it. So networking, what is it? You're probably thinking, you've heard it. People get it confused with some networking on the computer. No, networking is really just exchanging information and also developing social contacts. You may have heard of networking events, mixers. So I'm going to talk about that and how so you can be super successful in networking. So you can network via social media platforms. That's how we're all on here right now. You know, we all networked together and got invited, and now we're able to give you guys so much resources. And also you're usually networking at events or even at work events when you're hosted. Okay, perfect. And usually in networking events, you can gain information, advice, and referrals. Do not go to a networking event without a business card. A business card is literally important. If you don't have a business card because you don't get one from work, go on Vistaprint, spend the $10, put your name, your phone number, your email, and always have it with you, okay? It would help you so much. You need to gain business cards, but you also have to give them out because that's where the magic happens. Another thing I want to mention is that you need to have a tell me about yourself pitch ready when you go to networking events. You're going to have 1 minute with a person who's trying to get to know you, and you better have that figured out. And you're probably thinking, what does that even include when somebody asks me, tell me about yourself? Usually that's one of the hardest questions for people to answer. Is, let's be honest, a lot of us don't like to speak about ourselves. We'd rather speak about anything else but us. So think about, what are you doing currently? What do you want to do? And sometimes even a past story. And also have a joke in your back pocket. Know any current events. So yes, I know everyone is not always a big fan of knowing what's going on. So I always tell my students, there's an app on the phone called News. And read it because you never know what somebody may ask you. They can ask you something random that you didn't know about. In that worst situation, be like, well, I don't know nothing about it. Guarantee you they are going to walk away. And you don't want that. So remember to read the news, know about yourself, and a literally 1 minute pitch, like practice that because you're going to need it for interviews. And you're also going to need it to network. Another thing I always suggest, as young professionals, I know money is tight, but please save a little bit, because to go to some of these mixers that probably will end up in a career or promotion, you're going to need a little bit of money. You're going to need money to probably buy yourself a drink. You're going to need money to enter this event. So make sure you save just 10% of each paycheck and for your entertainment networking events, because you're going to need those funds for it. Another thing that I love to mention is that is self-promotion. You're promoting yourself, and you need to be comfortable in that. You know, networking, it's all, think of yourself as a product, right? Let's say you love water, right? And you are going to promote that water because you love it. That's the same way as you have to promote yourself. You have to love yourself. You have to know all that you want to. And also you should have core stories that you want to mention. Think about networking as an opportunity to interview with CEOs in a room. How will you sell yourself? And also develop stronger communication skills. This is huge. If you're not comfortable speaking in front of others, we have to fix that. Because in life, you're going to be pitching in front of your bosses. When you're quiet, they're going to think that you're just not interested in what they're speaking about. And the truth is, you probably are, but you're afraid to speak out and you're muting yourself. So you need to develop those strong communication skills. So if you have questions how to do that, please contact me. I literally teach public speaking. That is my forte. As you can tell, I love talking. So let me know if you're having some tough times. And also with communication skills, you most likely are going to interview in your life like 10 times. For jobs, if you're in a program, for my students who are applying to scholarships, for the major scholarships, they have to interview on the phone and sometimes in person. So you need to develop those skills earlier, because it's going to help you so much in your career. Also, gaining some insight. Don't always think when you're going to a networking event that you're just going to get business cards and you're going to talk about yourself and nothing else. Get educated, learn about other job opportunities, learn about anything. Every day you should be learning one thing that's new. And I think in networking, that's so important. And if you never heard of, like, let's say you're next to someone, which just happened to me before. I was next to two doctors and they were talking about some medical things. And I was like, what are they talking about? I've never heard of these words. But I literally remember to go in my car and I looked up the words. So I can educate myself, so I can know next time I hear those terms. So that's something I would totally have you guys do. And also, when you go networking, always have a little notebook with you. Write things down. Write things, questions they may have asked you that you probably didn't have a strong answer for. So you're ready for the next time somebody asks you that. And also be ready for potential opportunities. I got my job because of networking, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. And also be prepared to be hired on the spot for a job. You should be dressing like you already have a job that is in your mind. So if you want to be a CEO of a company and you know that CEO is going to be there, you better dress to impress. And I think that we mentioned about dressing in business casual. Sometimes you do not want to go with a full suit, but it depends on what networking event you're at. I know every year we usually have a crystal ball in Buffalo, New York. And let's say everyone dresses to impress. You have a full gown and you want to make sure that you're ready for that moment, because you want people to notice you. You want people to come up to you and talk to you. And lastly, I didn't put it on the slide, but I'm going to say it. When you're at these events, 1 drink minimum. Okay, right? And 1 drink maximum. Okay? 1 drink, and you have to be pleased to be like legal to drink. Don't drink underage. Don't do that. But you can't have 4 shots of tequila at a networking event. That's just not appropriate. I've seen it. That's why I'm saying it. Please be fancy a little bit. Get a glass of wine, and that's it. And drink slowly on the glass of wine. Do not just chug it down, because that just doesn't look professional and doesn't look good. And I see a lot of you guys laughing, but I've seen it, and if you guys went to networking events, you will see it too. Next slide. Okay, my story. So I have 2 stories that I'm going to mention. When I was 13 years old, I was at a community event, And I was talking, and it was a lawyer there who was in charge of a whole law department in the city of Buffalo during that time. And at that time, I wanted to be a lawyer. Things have changed, and I'll mention that a little bit later. And I was so excited, and I was so intrigued, and I knew all about myself. And that same lawyer who was in charge of that department gave me an internship on the spot. At 13 years old, at that time, the City of Buffalo Law Department was not even taking UB law students, okay? So I broke that mode right there, and I went in and I interned every summer because of the way I was able to express myself at 13 years old, that I had that opportunity. Then later on in my career, I told a man that his face was greasy and it gave me a job. Yes, I told one of my bosses who was a new council member, and I was at a media studio and he was about to be interviewed. And I looked at him, not knowing who he was at that moment. And I was like, sir, your face is greasy. You can't go on this camera looking like this. This is just not appropriate. And he looked at me and he's like, wow, the first honest person I've met since I've been elected. Isn't that crazy? So I immediately just gave him like a tissue, and I told him, please just clean that up. You cannot go on camera like this. So he did. And the tip for everyone, and I'm so glad I was always prepared. I had a resume in my car. I always do. You never know when you have to give somebody your resume and your business card. He asked me, he's like, oh, do you have a resume with you? Or can you email me? And I was like, I actually do. Give me 1 second. I went to my car. I grabbed my resume. I gave it to him. His secretary called me in 2 hours to set up an appointment and an interview. I interviewed with him. I ended up staying there for the summer, and he looked at me and I was like, well, I have another job opportunity. I'm going to be leaving. He said, no, you will not. We will double your pay. You will be working here throughout your college. And then on top of that, when you graduate, we will find you a position. So when people said I started from the bottom, now I'm here, like that was really me. I started as an intern, and I networked and I worked very hard, and I was able to go to various events, and I used everything I could to be where I'm at. I started as an intern, and now I'm the director of communications for the Buffalo Common Council, and hopefully future being an elected official. So having that background, having that drive, networking is huge. And if any of you guys are interested in becoming an elected official, I have to tell you something. You have to network, and you have to be good at it. You have to remember people's names. You remember the notebook I suggested? Write people's names down, their description, how they look, because that's going to help you. So let's say you're at the same event and you see someone and be like, oh, hi, Sunny. How's blah, blah, blah. How's your kids? You need to be able to start that small talk. A lot of people are not good at it. So you really have to work hard if you're not good at that. Another thing is focus on learning. Oh, like I said, you're always learning names, learning people's body postures, learning what they're interested in. And also make sure after you're done, you learn their names, because you're going to look them up and connect with them on LinkedIn. And then you're going to send them a follow-up message after networking. So you know what? It was so great to meet you. Hopefully we can grab coffee one day. I've done that so many times in my field. And the reason I have done that is because you never know when you're going to need somebody. So make sure you have that relationship, and also always surround yourself with a great team. When I say great team, that a good lawyer friend, which hopefully I have one right here, an educator. You know, you want to have everyone in your circle, because when you're around that positive energy, it's going to make you work even harder. So when you're networking, don't go to the people who are complaining. Don't go away from them. Focus on people who are go-getters in that room, because I guarantee you they're going to reach more goals in bigger positions because of their attitude. Have some common interests. You know, if that means music, current events, you have to have something in common with people. Like all these ladies on this call, how we all met probably is through the Miss America organization, which is incredible. But that's how it got us together. But what's going to keep us together is probably our passion to educate our youth, our passion to really be change makers. That's what's going to identify. That's our interest. And lastly, have a open mind. Oftentimes in life, we grow up and we think we're going to be one thing. And maybe that's what you're going to be. But I can tell you, I thought I was going to be a lawyer. I realized that it wasn't for me, even though I love making laws. So I realized I wanted to be an elected official, and I love marketing, and I love communications, and I love public relations, and I love talking. So I found a place where I can do that. I love engaging and empowering my residents. So that's why I went that way. And it's okay for you to look at other opportunities. And another thing is that I know a lot of people get stuck in a job. They get comfortable. Never get too comfortable. When you're networking, always be open for job opportunities. I was at a Crystal Ball years ago, and I was there. Literally, my boss was right next to me. A college offered me a job at the Crystal Ball, just talking to me for 5 minutes. And then after I walked away, and then another person offered me a job for my ability to speak and engage. I was a bank CEO offered me a job. And when it came down, guess what? They sent me an email because I gave them my business card, and they offered me an interview for a job that I wasn't even thinking about and I didn't even know existed. So this is so important for you guys to realize networking is the opportunity to open a door, right? Oftentimes I hear from a lot of my students, they're like, well, it feels like no one's hiring. It feels like no one understands how to communicate with me. Okay, let's flip that. People are hiring. There's positions that can be created. Are you worth making them create that position? Are you able to convince them? Are you able to negotiate your pay? Those are all things about networking. And lastly, what I suggest to all my young professionals before COVID, I know it's a little hard with COVID, but every month you should have one networking event on your calendar. Every month. It could range from $0 to $30 to $100. But every month you need to be surrounding yourself with professionals and networking, even though they may not even be in your same field. Because every company is going to need a lawyer. Every company is going to need a marketer. Every company is going to need something. And you may be that fit. So make sure you're always putting yourself out there.
Thank you so much. I want to touch on one thing before we move to the question and answer, because it's something that you mentioned and it seems so easier said than done. And I used to feel so uncomfortable doing it, but I've seen the true benefits of it is reaching out to people on LinkedIn after you meet them, that little notebook. So when I ran for city council, probably the biggest obstacle was remembering people's names and faces. That is a huge weakness of mine. So I had my little notebook. I'd write something down about them. And after every single debate or event, I would go home and everyone that I could find on LinkedIn that was in my notebook, I would add them, send them this quick little note and say something, one of the little details that I had written down about them. And I felt so uncomfortable. I remember my campaign manager saying I needed to do this. And after I did it about 10 times, I realized it's really not a big deal. Almost everyone responds and says thank you and says something back. And while none of those have panned out into a job opportunity for me in the last 2 years, I've had several of them reach out with opportunities. They just haven't been the right one for me. So just because it hasn't led to a job or something like that, I've been invited to charity events from these people. I've been invited to just social events to see these people again. So you just never know. And obviously, when people watching this are probably thinking, oh, well, I'm looking for a job. I want a job soon. I'm about to enter the job market. So it's all job, job, job. But networking is the one piece that's so much more than that. And it's the long game. Like you said, go to a networking event every month. So I would just tell people, if you're worried about LinkedIn, I used to be so weird about LinkedIn, whether it was during city council or in law school, even when we would have speakers come to classes and I would sit there and be like, I really need to send them a connection, but it's kind of weird. I only said 3 words to them. People love it. People love when you reach out. So It's not weird. If you're listening to this and you've thought this before, just do it. And after you do it 3 or 4 times, I promise you, you realize that it's like the least big deal in the world, but it makes a huge impact. So just really wanted to talk about that because I had a personal issue with it for quite a while. And
And you know what? I love that you mentioned that personal experience, because oftentimes people forget that these networking events sometimes have perks. Like one networking event I went to, it was a professional photographer there to help you do photos, your LinkedIn photo. So you can gain other tools to make sure you're successful in the job market by going to networking events. It depends which one you choose to go to.
absolutely. Okay, so question, answer, and let's see. I'll just skip to the first one. How should I answer? Tell me about yourself in a job interview if you just graduated and don't have work experience. So I wasn't sure if this person meant they just graduated high school or just graduated college, because I think the answer can differ a bit. So I'm going to punt this one to Miranda first to talk about how to answer it if you've just graduated from high school. And then either of you can jump in and answer the college one so we can have some variety to our answers.
So if you just graduated high school, I think something important is that you still have a lot of really amazing traits and skills, even if you don't necessarily have a degree in them, and you also have a lot of interests. So I remember when I graduated high school, I had done marching band all 4 years, and I remember literally Googling, what does marching band do for you? Like, what traits do you get from marching band? And I remember learning that I was like, it taught me really good time management because I had rehearsal almost every day with balancing classes and other extracurricular activities. It taught me about how to work as a team. I was on the leadership team. It taught me about working with others and leading a group of people. It taught me all of these traits. And I actually physically looked it up on Google and found all of these skills and these traits that I had no clue I could market myself as having. But as soon as I read them and thought back on my experience and kind of went through that self-reflection process of what I did in high school, I found all of these things that I was able to kind of sell myself with as traits that I had and skills that I learned. So I would definitely say go through that reflective process of what classes did I take, what activities did I join, what volunteer work did I do, and even if it seems really small to you, I did science fair. I completely forgot I did science fair until I applied to a research scholarship, and they were like, you doing science fair is so important because it shows you like researching things. It shows you like probing questions. It shows you like science. It shows you like learning. And so definitely don't count any opportunity or any skill that you have as not good enough or not like grand enough, because every single thing that you did taught you something and gave you a skill or a trait that is applicable. So it's just about going through that process and finding ways to make everything you did, no matter how big or how small, applicable to what you'd like to do.
Also, I would say with this question, please do not say, I am a daughter, I am this. It, I feel like obviously, that's important. When you get the job, you can tell them about your life story in that aspect, but not when they're asking you, tell me about yourself. You have to think about your past, your present, your future. How can you tie in that job? And also think about your qualities, your skill sets. You want to make sure, and I think I mentioned this about networking, it's the same pitch, just tailored to the job. I think we talked about resumes and cover letters, how we have to tailor it to every job. Same thing here. You have to make sure that your past, your current, your present, all that stuff makes sense for the job you're going after. So that's what I would suggest. And also, I love that we were just mentioning, don't be, naive about your past skills or your current skills. And sometimes you got to fluff it up a little bit. If you were, let's say, team captain for cross country, say, I led a team. You don't have to say a cross country team. You could just say, I'm comfortable leading a team of people. You have to learn how to word things to make your pitch a little bit stronger. So when you think about writing an essay, you want to make sure that essay is clean, it has proper words in it, it's basically beefed up. Same thing as you're telling me about yourself. And please don't make it 2-3 minutes, because an interviewer would not want to hear like a long tangent about yourself, okay?
And I was just going to add, so going off of both of those, it's really important, like she said, to tailor it to whatever you're doing. So for me, I did not go to school and get a teaching degree. I didn't know I wanted to be a teacher until a month before I graduated college. And luckily, we had the Oklahoma teacher strike and lost 50% of our teachers. So they were desperate. And I just took the exams and got my teaching certification. But in that job interview, I did not have the education experience to be an educator. I did not have the work experience, but I did have the life experience with kids. And I think what she was saying is so important to know the difference between your life story and your life experience that have instilled those qualities in you. So the first thing I said is, I have raised children since I was 10 years old. You know, I grew up in a single parent household. My mom worked 3 jobs and I took care of my 4 younger siblings and I raised them. So I know that I'm capable of working with kids. So just really tailoring it to whatever it is you do and whatever life experiences you've had without getting too personal and too heavy, using those qualities that you've obtained through your life experiences that make you equipped for that position.
And I'm just going to add one thing, because Sunny, you gave the perfect example that fits in with this little formula. So typically I tell people to start with a personal story, then your professional background, and then tell them why you would be a good fit for the team, why you would be good at that company. But for this one, I think taking out that professional background, it's all about the story. So you just told us that story right now, and that's so much more impactful and meaningful. And you're telling me a lot of traits and qualities you have. You've raised kids since you were 10. That shows resilience. That shows responsibility. That shows the ability to work with children. I mean, right there. So you're telling me a lot of things through your story. And what I always tell people when they're trying to figure out, tell me about yourself, and they don't have that experience, is anyone can just say a bunch of pretty words and use like all this fluffed up language and sound impressive, but you're the only one that can tell your story. And at the end of the day, they're not going to remember those fancy words. They're going to remember the story you tell. And the way that you did that right then, I just had to jump in because it was a perfect example of doing that and saying, you know, here's who I am, here's what I stand for, and here's why I would be good at this despite. And you don't tell them, you know, despite not having the experience you're looking for, but that's, you know, the silent part in your head. You're saying, you know, despite all that, this is what I have to offer. And it's pretty great. Okay. So I'm going to go to the next one. And this one is pretty broad, and I feel like everyone has different experiences. So how should I find jobs to apply for? And I love this question because everyone that I know and that I talk to has found jobs different ways. We've already talked about networking and how valuable that can be. So I will let any of you take the floor to talk about some of the different methods and ways that you have come across job openings.
Well, I'll go then. First, we talked about networking. Also, LinkedIn. I became a professor because I applied through LinkedIn. So LinkedIn is really good. Facebook, Monster, all these Indeed websites, all these websites, so you can find jobs like that. And also, I feel like oftentimes you can call around in different areas. Let's say you're a nurse. You can call different hospitals and see if they're hiring. So make sure that you're always putting yourself out there and you're always looking for the next opportunity. And if you're really trying to find a job, what I would want you to know is, like, I know stressful and tiring it is putting 100, 150 applications in a day. Just remember, sometimes you got to step away and let whatever happens. Like you will get emails back, and just take a beat sometimes, because I know how stressful applying for jobs is, especially when you don't have one and you really need that income. So just try to connect with people, try to see who's hiring, look at your friends, call your friends and say, hey, is your job hiring at all? I know it's maybe a little bit uncomfortable, but if you really do need somewhere to just get some income until you find a job in your field, sometimes you may need to take a job that's not in your field until you have that opportunity to interview for your dream job.
I'm going to feed off of that a little bit. So I got my job through networking at the protest at the Oklahoma State Capitol and just talking with educators, but also social media. Just like she said, it's so powerful. So one thing that I always suggest people do is you can follow hashtags on Instagram. And in Oklahoma, something that people commonly do is Oklahoma hiring. So if you follow a hashtag or a certain location, then those opportunities will pop up on your feed. And you can also do that on Facebook. We have this amazing thing called algorithms on Facebook. So if we're constantly searching things on Facebook or Instagram, then we have the ability for those things to just appear for us. But you do have to do that on your own. So hashtags on Instagram, as silly as it sounds, Instagram is actually such a powerful tool for obtaining jobs.
All right, I will go to the next one unless you have something, Miranda. Okay, good. So this next one, what time should I get to work on my first day and what should I bring? And this is a great question because it's something that you don't think about until your first day. And it's usually 6, 7 in the morning. And there's not really anyone that you can ask this question in the moment. So I'll quickly say my little piece. So my first day when I started at the law firm back in September, I got there 20 minutes early. It was too early. There was no one there. So I think you just really have to gauge your specific situation. And someone had made a comment during the interview process that they roll in at different times. So I maybe should have gone for 5 minutes early, but it was fine. I wasn't late. I got to sit in my car and wait till the first person rolled into the parking lot. So I would say maybe 10 minutes. I just have a friend that started a new job and they got there 20 minutes early and the same exact thing happened to them. So I guess that is kind of normal. I would think people would get there early on the first day to meet you, but I guess that's not how it works most of the time. And then what should you bring? I had this question the first day. I didn't really know. I brought my laptop. I stuck it in my purse because we didn't talk about it that much. So I think it just depends on the job you're going into and how much information they give you beforehand. I brought my laptop, I brought my iPad, I brought anything that I thought I might need. I brought chargers. I didn't need any of it. My purse was just 500 pounds and I didn't need it. They had my whole office set up. So it's also a good question before your first day, I think, to ask your new employer, do I need to bring anything? And then this alleviates this issue altogether. But I would just say, be as prepared as you can. And if you don't need it, then no harm, no foul. And that's kind of my little tidbit on this. But I think every job's different and every industry is different. So I'd love to hear from some of our other people what their thoughts on this is.
I like to call mine the survival kit when I talk about your first day in a job. So you're probably like, what the heck is a survival kit? So gum, just in case, hand sanitizer. I would have a little bit of makeup or a lipstick in there. I bring a bottle of water because you don't know if you're going to be thirsty throughout the day. A notebook or a portfolio where it has a notebook in there, a pen, a laptop, and also I always say to have your coffee before getting there. So maybe if you're going to have to go to Starbucks, make sure you plan that in. And 15 minutes ahead of time, I always say that's nice because even if you're sitting in the parking lot, your boss pulls in and he sees you there or she sees you there, they know that you're punctual, that you will be there. And that's already a good thing for them to see. Another thing that people often don't think about is putting their phones, do not bring them unless you need to. I know in a lot of my jobs, when I worked in the law department, they didn't want my phone around because during that time we were often in a court, you shouldn't just have it. Also extra headphones, just in case if you have to listen to something in your office and you don't want to be too loud, you may need headphones or the speakers are not working. And that's my survival kit.
I'll weigh in just something small. So I'm an engineering student. I don't think I ever said that. So I have worked in engineering internships and in the engineering firm. And my biggest piece of advice for literally anybody, but especially in the tech industry, is always just ask. I think it is we talked about it with asking before you interview what you should wear, asking what time you should get there, asking. If you ask, it shows interest. It never shows weakness. I used to think asking people for help or questions was a weakness thing. It is not. It is such a strength. It shows that you're able to rely on other people for help and that you don't know everything. It's strength to ask questions and it shows interest and it shows dedication. And so definitely just ask if you ever doubt literally anything. Ask your friends, ask people in the industry, but definitely ask your hiring manager or your human resources manager about what should be expected, because I took so much stuff with me on my first day of my first job. And like you said, they had my office set up and I was working in tech. And so then I had 3 computers and like 2, I had all this stuff, and like it was kind of embarrassing because it was like probably should have known that they were going to have me like code, so I wasn't going to probably code on like my computer for their it was like all these things that started coming in where I was like, man, I probably didn't think this like all the way through. So definitely ask. It's never really that bad. A little bit of embarrassment. I'll never take all of my computers with me to my first job again because I'll never have my first job again. But you still, it's always nice to ask. And that first day is going to be awkward. That's my other piece of advice. There's no way that your first day of your or any job is not going to be a little bit awkward because you're going to be the new person. You're not going to know things as well. You're going to have to ask, where's the water fountain? Where's the bathroom? You don't know things super well. So always go back to, don't be afraid to ask, and don't be afraid to be a little bit of uncomfortable. Lean into the discomfort. It's going to get better. And someday you're going to get to help somebody else go through those things. So remember it too. So you can help the new people find their desk and then find the bathroom and the water and all that kind of stuff.
And I have to comment on the coffee thing that you said, bring your own coffee, because this is probably the biggest takeaway that I've had from this, because my first day, I didn't know if I was really allowed to use the coffee. I thought it was just for clients because like the cups were all special and have the law firm logo on them. And I like kept trying to check all day to see if anyone else had one. And so I just didn't drink coffee all day. So splurge for coffee on your first day, even if you're trying to save money, because you'll start to be able to figure it out. But it was, I mean, I know it's crazy to be like, oh, I'm so addicted to coffee. And I was really stressed out the first day not having it, but it drove me crazy. And I had a headache most of the day from lack of caffeine. So just splurge for coffee on the first day if you get nothing else out of this. And I think the other thing is just ask beforehand. I felt so silly after, like you said it, and I thought, why didn't I ask what time to get there and what to bring? But it just like didn't even occur to me. And I woke up that morning and was like, I have no idea what I'm doing. So like she said, gonna be awkward no matter what. But if you ask and you know some of those things, it can make it a little bit easier that first day.
And also for women, I just want to mention, have a small sewing kit. And the reason I can tell you this, I had a button come off before. And you just want to be prepared. And when you have your own office, just have it in your like drawer because you never know. And also other items that women should have just in case. So just be prepared for the worst scenario because it can happen. And you just want to be just a tad bit prepared.
And one last thing, I just keep thinking of more things. I would highly recommend wearing a dark color on your first day, because if you happen to spill coffee all over your blouse or your dress or whatever you're wearing, you're going to be so self-conscious the whole day. But if you're wearing black, it's not as noticeable. If you want a change of clothes in your car, I think that's a really great idea too, but people are going to notice. So if you wear black, I think there's the least amount of room for disaster striking on your first day. I have spilled coffee all over me before, but I really didn't care after my first day. Or after my first week, probably, because it happens. I can throw a jacket on. I kept extra suit jackets in my office or in my car. But that first day, you don't want to change clothes in the middle of the day, and you don't want to be walking around with spillage on you. And so highly recommend dark color in the first day. I don't know if that's really related to this question, but first day topic, it feels relevant. Okay, so we'll go to the next one, and we are almost done. Okay, so someone asked about being unhappy in their current role and how do they look for new jobs without getting fired before they find the new job?
I have something for this. So the first thing, you won't get fired for looking for other jobs if they don't find out about it. And that sounds so bad, but the most common thing that I have seen, especially this year teaching in the pandemic, a lot of the teachers at my school district who have been working on their resumes and submitting applications are doing it on the work computer. Don't don't do it on the company's computer. And also, no one else really needs to know that information but you. So maybe don't share that information with your colleagues or your associates or your administrators or whoever it is that you're working with. That is because you were unhappy in that role and you were wanting to look for something better for you. So let that be a private thing that you're doing on your own. And like I said, just be responsible about where you're doing it. Even if you're on a company's Wi-Fi and you are doing it from your phone, they do have access to that information. And so that is the biggest mistake that I've seen people do, is Just make sure that you're doing it conscious, professional, and also still being considerate of the current workplace that you are in.
I would say that make sure that you know the label, like the labor laws, you know what I mean? So they cannot fire you depending on your state laws. So make sure you're aware of that just in case, because half the time, let's say you do make it to the final round for a job, maybe they will call your current employer. That's something that's just realistic. That's gonna happen. And if that happens, just make sure when you have that conversation with your boss after they call your boss, and make sure you just tell them the truth that you need a higher opportunity for your family. You don't have to tell them that you're unhappy there, but you can tell them that you need a bigger opportunity to grow in your life and that's why you're looking for this job. I think sometimes you have to tell them less information is the best, and also be respectful. I love how Sunny said, do not do it on company's time or on the company's equipment. And lastly, I'm sorry that you feel unhappy in your role, and I really want you to know that you should feel unhappy. Every day you should be happy to go to work, and hopefully you can find a job that culture is not toxic, that you're happy in there, and every day, even though it's probably hard to get up, but you're happy in what you're doing. So just make sure that you're aware of the current job that you're looking for has the same values that you have, and ensure that you look at reviews of past people who work there. That's huge. I don't think we talked about that, but oftentimes people like take a job without looking at the past reviews of other employees who work there. Make sure you do your own homework on that too.
I'll just weigh in quick on the LinkedIn side of this too. So it's no, you're totally good. I was just gonna say, make sure that you can put like looking for a job on your LinkedIn. You are like connections with a bunch of people you work with, and you change your status to looking for a job, that's going to be a little bit suspicious, especially if you're trying to keep that kind of, like Sunny was saying, it's a great thing to keep kind of personal and not like be like open about sharing, since you don't want to have any conflicts of interest. So I would definitely recommend being careful with using LinkedIn in that capacity, and also being sure that you're regularly updating and checking your LinkedIn so that when you do accept a job, you're changing that from looking for a job to that you have a position. So that's just a good way to keep tabs on that and on that side of things, so that you don't end up with your, you know, business in a place you maybe don't want your business. So be careful with that too.
That's a really good point. I've seen that happen to a lot of people, and I get confused whether they think that it's somehow invisible to the people they work with that they have updated to looking, or maybe I always wonder, do they not care at that point? I don't know, but I have seen it happen. So just be careful of that. This is the last question from the submitted things. I tried to keep common questions kind of together, and this one flows from the last one. How do I leave my job without making enemies? I have just one thing to say on this, and I'll let you guys go into more detail because I'm sure it's the same thing. 2 weeks notice. And I did a TikTok video on this and was absolutely mind blown by the hundreds and hundreds of people commenting that they didn't know about this and that they didn't think it was necessary. So I will go ahead and disclaimer, this is for professional roles. It's great if you're in an hourly position, or you're, in a, the food industry or something like that, and you give it 2 weeks notice, always appreciated, not required. Even in the professional world, it's not required. It is a professional courtesy, and it will keep you from burning bridges. And so I'll let you guys talk a little bit about what it is, how to do it, and how to get out without burning those bridges.
I would for sure say draft a nice resignation. Even if you're leaving and you hate the company, don't write that. Please don't. Write a nice letter thanking them for the opportunity for you to be able to work there, how much you have learned, and basically the last day. Make sure you bold the last day you're leaving so they know. And if it's a company that you do like and you know that they're having a hard time covering, I would say if you can work with your new employer to have maybe a month left there. It depends on the situation. I've seen so many different ways that this is done. Remember that you don't want to burn bridges. Like you never know if you go to a new job and you hate it. you maybe want to go back to the old job. So make sure that you just leave on a good note. Also, make sure that you're overall like confident in giving that letter ahead of time. I know it's super scary to giving it to your boss and like, yeah, I'm leaving. Just be very sure of yourself and find that peace that you're leaving. And you don't have to tell your coworkers that you're going. That is not mandatory for you to do it. If you know that you work in an environment that people love to gossip, don't do it. If your boss wants to mention that you'll be leaving, that's on your boss's, like that's your boss's decision, but you do not have to tell the whole world that you're leaving and where you're going. And if somebody asks you, yes, I'm leaving, I'm going for a better opportunity for myself. Thank you so much for asking.
I think feeding off of that, that's exactly what I was going to say is you don't have to disclose every bit of information. At the end of the day, if you're leaving a job, it is to better yourself, your mental state, your professional standings, whatever it is. So if someone is going to ask or want that information, make sure you're doing so respectfully. And if you do so respectfully and you still have enemies, just know that those people do not have the right intentions for you and they don't understand that you are in fact trying to better yourself and your future in your life. So most likely, if you give a good resignation letter, if you give a 2 weeks notice, if you're respectful about delivering why you are leaving the job and you still have enemies, it's going to be okay. That those people, I mean, you're going to be okay if those people don't have a great, perspective or feeling towards you afterwards, because you did the right steps. And at the end of the day, you need to look out for yourself. And if you did the right steps to make sure that you were respectful and professional about it, that's all that matters.
I'll weigh in quick on, so when I read this question, I actually took a completely different thought process. You guys first went to 2 weeks notice and professional, not enemies. My first thought was my coworkers, was that when I left, my coworkers would not like me. And so my first thought was, so I worked at Chick-fil-A. I was going to say the chicken place, but I'm in the South, so that's the only chicken place, but there are other ones, I bet. So I worked at Chick-fil-A and I had a completely different thought process. So just proposing this, of course, it's completely up to what you're comfortable with. But when I was leaving, it was because I was taking another job and I loved my job. I loved working at Chick-fil-A. I had so much fun. I loved my coworkers. It was very hard for me to leave. And so when I decided that I was going to turn in my 2 weeks notice and that I wasn't going to come back, my plan was I want to tell all my coworkers so we can have our last 2 weeks together. And I remember I made the world's tallest ice cream cone for somebody one day. And I gave some people large milkshakes who probably got small. I'm so sorry, Chick-fil-A. But I was just having my best 2 weeks, and my boss was supportive of me. All my coworkers were supportive of me. Whenever an old customer came in who I served a lot, everyone was go see Miranda, it's her last week, So that was fun. So definitely don't feel like you have to keep it a secret if you want to kind of celebrate your last weeks, especially if you feel like you're going out on a high note, if you're just going to a new phase of your life. So completely up to you which route you take, whether you tell people or not. But I also wanted to say, I think there is merit in if you wanted to tell people. I don't think that it's always a bad situation to be communicative with your coworkers and with your boss. Completely depends on the situation. But for me, that closure and the sentimental last couple weeks and doing my last things was really fun for me. So definitely take, and of course that was food. It's always different businesses. It's not appropriate at my engineering firm. I not wouldn't have been you get free engineering service this week because it's my last week. It's completely different in different industries, but there's always, communicating and that kind of thing. It was fun for me to celebrate my last 2 weeks. So, and they're all my friends. Whenever I go to Chick-fil-A, I'm I love y'all. So, taking different routes.
I'm so glad you brought that perspective because sometimes I get tunnel vision and I think about the thing that's most recent and relevant to me. And so I was thinking, the whole 2 weeks notice, you probably don't want to tell anyone. I know I recently left the first law firm that I was at, and I just want to say something about how scary it is. And it is terrifying. So I literally called, 26 years old, called my mom 5 times to pep talk me within an hour to finally walk down and give my letter. And so I would give the advice, have someone to do that for you, because I think I'm a pretty confident person. And that's what I said to her on the phone. How do people that have self-confidence issues do this? Because it is hard. Have someone that can pep talk you. I also recommend doing it sometime after 3 o'clock and just handing it in. I felt I really wanted to talk about it and explain it. And I was like, oh, this is so terrible. And my mom was like, hand it to them, say, I'm taking the rest of the day. We can discuss this tomorrow. It was scary. And I think that my voice might have cracked when I said it, but I was so grateful that I did that. And so sometimes that's how it is. And I was told not to tell anyone at the office. And it was a very awkward 2 weeks. It was just strange. So that's like my tunnel vision so recent, but I have left other jobs that were very similar to Miranda. I worked as a waitress in 2 different places, and my last 2 weeks were amazing. We all had a great time, much like her experience. And I also worked at a bank, and I left working as a bank teller to go to law school. So I was going to a different opportunity. My last 2 weeks again were amazing. They threw me a party. It is always so different. So I'm glad that you brought the perspective about making enemies with like coworkers and celebrating those last 2 weeks, because I think so often it's kind of an awkward, miserable last 2 weeks for most people. But sometimes it's fun. And so just gauge the situation. And I think it's important to talk about it because a lot of people have never experienced quitting a job or leaving a job. And so if they only heard the perspective of don't tell anyone and just, turn in your letter, then they might be in a situation more like Miranda's and mine when I had good experiences and they'd be like, keep it a secret and not know that they can celebrate that last week. So I think that was a really great perspective. And I'm glad that you brought it up to contrast what the rest of us are saying.
Carly, can I say one more thing?
Yes,
Because
absolutely.
I think it's so important when you leave or decide to leave a company. Oftentimes, the manager or your HR individual would ask you to stay and or offer you maybe $1 more, $2. And I want everyone to think about that situation, because if you're leaving, it has to be a reason, and it's not always money. So if you're leaving half the time, you can be very honest. I don't see the potential growing here at this moment. Are you going to offer me an opportunity to grow? And if they say, actually, we can't do that right now, it's time for you to go. So I know it's scary to put in your 2 weeks or to leave a company that you love. Like I've left places that I adored, but they came back trying to pay me more, but I knew the opportunity was not going to be the same. So be confident of leaving if you're really leaving to hire and to better yourself in different ways. If that means you see a company that you could see yourself reaching a leadership position there and you can't see it in your current employment, then really think deep in that and take that when they're coming back to you. Because I guarantee you, they will come back to you if they love you and they know how hard you work. They're going to come back to you, offer you more money because they always think it's the money. Or they may offer you a bigger position. I've seen people who got offered bigger positions because they decided they wanted to leave and the money. And then if you really want to stay there because they're offering you something super competitive, then go for it. But if not, and you know they won't keep their promise, then you need to depart from that company.
Yeah, I think that's important. Know your reasons and be very steadfast in them. I know for me, there were things that were alluded to when I was hired as far as opportunities that would present themselves that were not happening and did not seem like they were going to happen at any point. And they came back, the money was offered, opportunities were offered, and I just knew that there was not reality behind it. I think there was great intentions. And so I had to just stay fast with this is just not working for me anymore. I would be happy to train whoever's coming after me, but it is time for me to move on to a different opportunity. And it was difficult because they show you these flashy things, and you just have to really know why you're leaving and stay true to that. So I want to thank everybody so much for taking the time to be part of this Professionalism 101 workshop. There's so much value and substance and content in here. The three of you are just amazing examples of not just women in the Miss America organization, but just really awesome, professional, innovative women that are out there serving as role models in their communities. And so I can't thank you enough for being a part of it. Yes, and I think it's so amazing to collaborate with women from across the country. So the last thing that I will say before we sign off is that if you're watching this and you're an educator and you'd like to show it in your classroom, or you would like the link to show it to your kid, I can't speak. If you have a high schooler or even a college student that you think would benefit, please reach out. You can send DMs, you can send comments, whatever you want to do, reach out, and one of the four of us will get that to you, because this is free content that is, like I said, so much value. I wish that I hadn't taken till 26 to learn most of this. I still learned throughout this presentation things that I didn't know, or was reminded of things that haven't been top of mind. So you should never stop learning. I wish that I had learned these things sooner, but schools, they're just still not teaching a lot of this, or not as in depth as they should. So thank you so much for being here. It was such a treat. And yeah,